Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile 2 video, and in this one, I'm going to talk about leveling as a summoner. There's a couple of different ways to do this, and I'll be focusing this video entirely around witch summoner leveling. This obviously applies to both the Lich approach as well as the Infernalist. And before we dive into the video, I do want to say thank you to everyone who's supporting the channel with all the subscriptions. It really helps the channel out when you guys click that subscribe button. If you haven't already and you enjoy the content, I would really appreciate that. Another thing to point out is that this video will be posting on a day where I am actually flying to China with my editor Kikis, who's editing this video actually. And therefore we will be flying to China for sponsorship. So we're missing one day, and I do apologize for that, but we'll be having tons of content available for you guys. Anyways, moving on to the video and not wasting everyone's time. Minion leveling is basically the way you approach it as a witch is you don't level with minions until middle, maybe end of Act 3. Then you can switch over. Don't have to, but you can. So I wanted to walk you guys through the process of this and basically talk about how I've done it and the things that I like and prefer in terms of this approach, and keep it kind of generic. But one thing I really want to point out is that Path of Exile 2 build guides, my written build guides, they're with EPIDEMICSOUND, who owns PoE Vault, which is where these guys are posted, and this is where you'll find the written leveling guide for the recently posted Lich minion leveling. Let me show you. PoEvault.com or PoE-vault.com/PoE2 actually. And in here, we can click on the witch. We have some guides here, but just like everyone else, all of the websites, basically all guides are down. Everything has to be redone, and that's what we've done. There's a disclaimer here at the top as we're going through some changes still and making sure that some tools are ready. Path of Building, for example, just got an update 5 minutes before I started this recording, so hopefully we'll have everything ready, but that's basically it. There might be some changes in this video compared to what you'll read in the written guide, so do keep that in mind. If that is the case, I will have to refer to the written guide because that is the ones I will always keep the most up to date, since I can't always make a new video for any little change. That said, do check it out. And I do want to say one more thing about this before I do give you guys a little TLDR recap. At the very bottom of all my written guides, you'll find this little link, join the ARPG Vault. This is actually a Discord server that ICVanes is managing together with ARPG, or together with us, ARPG blasters and writers. Essentially, you can ask questions in here in this Discord server, and we will respond to you more or less within 24 hours every day of the year. This extends to Last Epoch, Path of Exile 1, Path of Exile 2, even D4. So if you ever have any issues with any of my guides, and I happen to not be live streaming, so you can ask me on stream, you can always swing by this Discord for that assistance. Anyways, let's go through and talk about the leveling. Let me bring up Path of Building. So the first step is that you'll be playing as a witch in my example here. What I would recommend doing is specking the trees nodes up like this. And basically, we're deviating from minions and doing chaos nodes instead. Once you've done that, you go and pick up the spell damage. Then you go and pick up the chaos nodes. Once you've done this section, this is where you start picking up minion nodes. The guide will cover this. And then when you then transition away from the chaos approaches and want to switch into full minion, like middle or end of Act 3, that is when the nodes will change like this instead, and this gets cut out entirely. So that is the current early stage of transition with the tree. I also do want to point out that if you happen to be playing a Lich, what's going to happen is that you will pick up Necromantic Conduit, which will burn your mana. And if you do that, the first couple of nodes that you want to make sure that you pick up when you get that ascendancy actually looks something a little like this. These mana regeneration nodes, together with clarity on one of your aura gems, is going to help you sustain mana till you get your second ascendancy. And once you get your second ascendancy, you can take those nodes away. So those are the kind of approaches you need to think about if you do a Lich compared to Infernalist. Other than that, both builds, in my opinion, will be leveling and playing the very same way. For the ascendancy nodes Infernalist, normally we pick up the Hellhound first, and the second node normally goes into Altered Flesh, but you can wait with this. I would recommend holding off on this until you have a little bit of chaos resistance to not take unnecessary damage on that source. So that is the current take and pointers I have when it comes to actual skill tree. So when it comes to the early stage of leveling, my recommendation is literally to focus on doing chaos damage. We'll be using Essence Drain, we're having Contagion and Unearth to follow that up. And basically the TLDR, obviously all of this is in detail in the written guide, but we're basically picking up chain support for Essence Drain. This allows it to hit multiple targets, makes it easier to not have to snipe hit that one guy in the middle of the pack that you hit with a Contagion. And this is because Contagion will allow you to spread its damage over time effects that the enemy had onto other targets when it dies. And then you have an Essence Drain, which deals a lot of damage. You want to start with Contagion, then throw Essence Drain, and just watch everything die immediately. And the next support I would recommend picking up is actually Unleash support on the Contagion, which allows you to hit 3 targets with Contagion, making it, again, easier for you to make sure that entire packs of enemies dies within 2 of your casts. Outside of this, when a pack of enemy dies, you'll run Unearth, and that's basically the general approach in the early stages. You'll then move over to adding some other sources of power to this build. For example, once we get the Feyris kill and you kill the first Spirit Skull, providing gem, I would recommend picking up something like Withering Presence. This is to make sure enemies take increased chaos damage, as we're going to fully emphasize on the whole and double down on the idea of doing chaos damage for leveling. The next time you'll pick up or find a spirit gem, you'll do want to pick up the Raging Spirits. And this is something that you either get lucky and find earlier, or you can pick them up when you kill the Azak Bog Witch in early Act 3. When that happens, you can still do the Essence Drain Contagion setup with chaos damage output and using Despair Curse and stuff like that, as the guide will go through. But you also can enable Arsonist Skeletons. And the reason we use these is to basically detonate our Raging Spirits, which we summon by using Flame Wall. And the playstyle is this: Essence Drain on top of a Contagion, with the Contagion being the first cast if it's a pack you're killing. But a single target is Essence Drain Contagion, and then Flame Wall, which summons 2 Raging Spirits, and then you'll detonate those with your Arsonist. This is a setup that I much prefer, especially with the support gems like Commandant, Bidding, and a Magnifying Effect, because you can get such insane AoE and great damage output from these explosions. Some people do prefer to level with something like with the Skeletal Snipers. I think that is a perfect fine way to play. You can even do Gas Clouds if you want to do that. I just like the idea of the Arsonist, and they worked out very well for me, even before the HP nerf in the patch 0.2. So that's what I've been playing, and that's the leveling guide that I have posted for you guys. And once you switch over to pure minions, you'll still be running with this whole idea of exploding enemies through the means of summoning your SRS and then exploding them. Now, some changes to this that is not in the build guide. Obviously, I want to make sure that this video has some value for you guys and not just be a rip-off copy of me TLDRing the entire written guide. I do want to point out that if you happen to be leveling as a Twink, your alt character, or if you get lucky with some drops or even currency to buy these type of leveling items, what I would recommend doing is looking into the access of things like Enfolding Dawn. Enfolding Dawn does some very cool things. First off, it gives you 100 plus extra spirit, which is really, really good. Also gives you some all elemental resistances, which is nice, but it gains no inherited bonuses from intelligence. This means your mana will be cut hard. This is mostly a problem for Infernalists leveling as minions when you get to the mid-section or early endgame. However, a Lich can use this all the way into endgame. Hell, I'm still using it on my current character at the time of this recording, which is level 70 or 80 by now. I'm still using it Enfolding Dawn, and I have no issues with mana at all because of that second ascendancy from the Lich itself. However, what it does, it opens up some options in terms of what you can achieve during the leveling with minions early on. And this is where Spectre comes into play. It's a level 7 skill gem, which you can use at level 22. If you happen to get that, there are a couple of options for leveling before you get to that Act 3 Vol Guards, which are just absolutely bonkers in terms of leveling. So if you happen to get yourself access to utilizing the spirits to do one of those specters that is not the meta or the current best specter that we found so far, for example, Act 1 or Act 2 specters, my recommendation would actually be to look into things like a Cultist Archer. Cultist Archer is found in Freythorn Act 1, And what these bad boys are doing is actually doing pretty decent damage. They're not fantastic, but when you're leveling, the damage is actually pretty good with a general actual bow attack. However, every 8 seconds, they will shoot out rain of spores, which will just decimate large groups of enemies, making it very, very comfortable to use when it comes to that type of play. Another thing to point out is that the cultist archers do have a 70 spirit recommendation. So not recommendation, but requirement rather. So do think you keep that in mind that they are somewhat expensive, which is why I don't really recommend them in my written guide, but rather so if you happen to get access to some leveling uniques, your character's pre-prepared to do this, or you have currency to buy these things. And I think that's quite important to point out because it makes the leveling a lot easier. As currently the game is very, very hard, at least at the time of this recording. So bosses like Yamanra, the end of Act 2 campaign boss, can be very, very, very rough to deal with. But once you get into Act 3, the build becomes, or the leveling process becomes much, much smoother, and you'll start ramping very quickly from there on out. Anyways, I'm going to try not to yap and rant and waste you guys' time too much. I just wanted to make a little TLDR video of how I leveled, how the leveling felt for me playing with minions. And I did this before the HP toned down in the game, so now it's much easier. But I had a pretty easy time once we figured things out on what to do. And some tips and tricks for how you can improve your stuff with some alt characters or unique guidance to level with. Hope you guys enjoy this one. Again, like I said before, if you do like this content, I would appreciate very much if you did hit that like button, subscribe specifically for more content, and leave a comment down below if you had any other suggestions or tips for the new players coming into Path of Exile 2 to help them level in this game. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe and keep rocking.